The abstract concepts through beautiful mathematical mind have got shape in the form of mathematical formula. This is pure mathematics. And then through applied mathematical talent, they come to our daily life reality. This is applied mathematics. We are extremely hopeful to be enriched in both branches of mathematics in coming couple of hours through this webinar. You know, Google Meet is our streaming platform, and I have a request to all the participants of this webinar that please mute your respective audio button to prevent unnecessary noise so that our speakers may deliver their talks uninterruptedly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I will. Hello, am I
Yes.
audible? Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you,
you are
sir.
audible.
Now I will request Dr. Azizul Haq, the convener of this program, to kindly introduce our new speaker and to begin the session.
Before we going to the speaker, I am requesting our Honorable TIC, Professor Devashish Rai Chaudhary, to deliver some important lecture. Devashish, over to you.
Due to some technical issues, we are much delayed with our speech of the TIC. So here we have managed somehow for his speech. So he is currently going to start the session by his speech.
Okay, Devashish.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Dear colleague and student, the Department of Mathematics of Sri Gopal Banerjee College has organized a two-day international webinar on pure and applied mathematics. We all know that COVID-19 has affected the normal educational activities throughout the world. Internet might be the sole media through which we are now able to carry on our academic activities. But this online seminar had one great advantage. We can get access to the eminent scholars of different parts of the world, which might be difficult and expensive in normal cases. I hereby welcome the speaker of webinar, Dr. Mohiuddin Chishti, Associate Professor, Department of Mathematics, University of Tabuk, Saudi Arabia. Dr. Kanailal Mahato, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics, Institute of Science, BHU, India. Dr. Saurabh Das, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics, NIT, Jamshedpur, India. Ali Haidar, Postdoc Research Fellow, John Hopkins University, Baltimore, USA. I am really grateful to them. They have reserved some of their precious time for us. I believe the students, the scholars, and the faculty will be greatly benefited from their speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Devashish.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful words. Up next, we have the lecture session by our eminent speaker, Dr. Kanailal Mahato. Dr. Kanailal Mahato is an assistant professor at the Department of Mathematics, Institute of Science, Banaras Hindu University. Dr. Kanailal Mahato has completed his PhD from IIT ISM Dhanbad. His area of specialization is pseudo-differential operator distribution theory, wavelet transform. At present, he is also working in a research project named Characterization of Pseudo-Differential Operator and Wavelet Transform on certain distribution spaces. He has published several papers in renowned international and national journals Before I formally invite him to begin his talk, let me just request all of you to post your questions in the chat box. Our joint convener, Dr. Rudrajit Sadhu, will convey this question to the Dr. Mahato at the end of his session. I request Dr. Kanailal Mahato, please start your session. Over to you, Dr. Mahato.
Good evening to all of you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer and the principal of the college, Sri Gopal Banerjee College, Mogra, Kalani Nadia. And here I am going to present talk on wavelet transform. So before going to discuss about the wavelet transform, we need to introduce that is we need to study about the Fourier transform and which again that is a more general transformation as comparable to Fourier transform, that is of your fractional Fourier transform. And later on the why we need the wavelet transform, that is what are the drawbacks for which the problems cannot be solved with the help of Fourier transform. So that is why we need to introduce about the windowed Fourier transform, and later on the more general cases, that is wavelet transform, that will be discussed. And at the end, that is various forms of wavelet transforms associated with either Fourier transform or fractional Fourier transform, and one another integral transformation, that is of your fractional Hankel transformation, that is studied. And in between, few applications are also there, that is to solve certain partial differential equations with the help of either fractional Fourier transforms or fractional Hankel transforms. So before going to discuss about the Fourier transforms or fractional Fourier transforms or Hankel, fractional Hankel or Hankel, whatever be that, so we need to introduce some function spaces. So that is the most general function spaces, that is of your LP spaces. That is, it is a function collection of all those functions satisfying this norm, that is the norm is defined by minus infinity to infinity as value of f of x raised to the power p dx and whole to the power 1 upon p. If this is finite, so then we can say that the function f is belong on the spaces LP of R, and it is of your LP spaces is of your Banach spaces. So now for the particular cases for p is equals to 1 and p is equals to 2 and the values of p lying in between 1 to infinity, the different structures are there for the function spaces, LP spaces, and plays a very important roles in different fields of mathematics. So for instance, the elements of L1 of R called the Lebesgue integrable functions, and the elements of L2 of R are known as the square integrable functions. And another thing, that is if we restrict the domain, that is of your, instead of taking the range of the integration R, we are going to take a finite interval AB. So then we can denote it L1 of closed interval AB of R. So now if we take any function f belongs to L1 of R, so then it obviously belongs to L1 of closed interval AB. But the converse is not true, that is those functions belongs to L1 of closed interval AB. This always not belongs to the L1 of R. For instance, you can take the function, constant function f of x is of L1, so then obviously it belongs to the L1 of closed interval AB, but it does not belongs to L1 of R. So now here we can see few examples. So that is x to the power minus 1/3. So that is belongs to L2 of R. But if we consider x raised to the power minus 2/3, then it does not belongs to L2 of R. And another function, that is f value of x raised to the power minus half, exponential of minus half x, this belongs to L1 of R, but it is not in L2 of R. So these are the few examples for we can take the particular functions for characterizing the L1 R and L2 of R, of the different types of function spaces. So now we need to introduce few operators before going to introduce about the Fourier transformations. So first one is of your translation operator. So if fx be any function, so then its translation is denoted as t a of f of x, and it is defined by the relation 1, and modulation, that is denoted as mb of f of x, that is defined by the relation 2, and by the dilation, that is dc of f of x, that is defined by the relation 1/3. And if we choose c is of your -1, so then it becomes the parity operator, and this is defined by the p of f of x, that is d of -1 f x, that is f of minus of x. So these are the few operations, so that is translation, modulation, dilations, and parity operator. And later on we need to introduce about the convolution, that will comes later on. So now the integral transformation, that is defined for.
Your screen is visible, sir.
Okay, thank you. So in general, the integral transform for any function f of x, where f of x is defined on the closed interval ab, denoted by t of f of x and defined by the relation 4, where k is said to be the kernel of the integral transform, and it satisfies certain norm inequalities. And for particular values k of xy, if we choose exponential raised to the power minus of xy, so then it becomes the Laplace transform. And if we choose a is of your minus infinity, b is of your plus infinity, and k of xy is of your exponential minus of it omega, so then it becomes the Fourier transformation. So in general, the Fourier transformation for any function which is absolutely integrable function on R is defined by the relation 6, and for the function phi of t. And if we see that the Fourier transformation of the function phi is also again belong to the L1 of R spaces, then it is inversible, and its inverse is given by the relation 7, and the convergence is of your pointwise convergence. So now here in general, that is phi of t is assumed to be as the input, and the output, that is with the help of the Fourier transformation, can be treated as phi cap of omega. And in general, phi of t is of your that is input signal, that is in time domain, and phi cap of omega, that is in the frequency domain. So that will be discussed just later on, that is the physical significance of Fourier transformation. So in general, phi of t is the input signal, and phi cap of omega, that is of your output of the frequency. So now these are the some basic properties of Fourier transformations. So if f and g are the absolutely integrable functions taken from L1 of R, and if alpha and beta are any two complex constants, so then we can see that the Fourier transformation is of your linear, that is given by the relation A, that is next is of your shifting property, that is Fourier transformation of shifted by t of a of f, that is given by the modulated m of minus a of Fourier transformations. And another c is by the scaling relations, and the relation d gives the modulation relations. So now as we can see that the function is of your, that is the range of the integration is of your minus infinity to infinity, so that is of your improper integration holds. So now if we take then for the differentiation formula can be found by the relation E, and it states that for the function f and t of f, if we choose both of the functions are taken from L1 of R, then it is differentiable, and its derivative formula is given by the relation E. And similarly, that is f, that is for the nth order differentiable functions, how we can find out its Fourier transformation. So that satisfies the certain conditions, that is if its n minus nth order derivatives vanishes as t goes to infinity, so then it's the nth order the differentiated functions Fourier transformations can be obtained by the relation f. And these are the basic properties. After some calculation we can easily verify those relations. And another relation is there, that is if f is a function taken from the Ln of R, so then its Fourier transformation, that is f cap of omega, goes to 0 as omega goes to infinity. That is, at infinity, the Fourier transformation must vanishes. For those functions, f taken from the absolutely integrable functions or Ln of R. So now that is another operator, that is convolution operator. For those functions taken from Ln of R, it is denoted as f star of g, and it is defined by this integral relation, and which exists almost everywhere for all x belongs to R. So now these are the few algebraic properties of the convolutions defined by this relation. So convolution is a pure commutative, and it satisfies the associativity property, and it is of your satisfies by the distributive relation, it represents by the relation C, and it is also f star of g is also integrable functions when we are going to take the functions f and g from the absolutely integrable functions. So these are the some basic properties of convolutions, and here we can see that if that is the convolution property can be visible, that is, if f and g are taken from the Ln of R, then the Fourier transformations of the f star g is of your each of their Fourier transformation multiplied by. And last one is of your Parseval's relation. That is, if we consider f and g taken from L2 of R, that is square integrable function, so then we can see that this one is the relation for the, that is, f and g are of your, that is, simple functions, and which relates with the Fourier transformations, each of them. So now the fractional Fourier transformations. So the fractional Fourier transformations, which are the generalizations of Fourier transformations, so which is defined by the relation 8, where the kernel k theta of t omega is defined as in the relation 9. So here, if we choose theta is of your pi by 2, so that gives the, as usual, classical Fourier transformations, and if we choose theta is not n pi, so then it given by the kernel, that is c theta exponential of I by 2 by this relation. So now, which is the most general cases for the fractional Fourier transformations, and here another parameter also involved, that is of your theta. So later on we can see for the particular functions, that is how the generalization can be visible. That is, if we plot the curve phi of t in the x-axis and the y-axis by the phi cap of omega, so then theta represents the any angle through which we can impose the function, and such that it represents or more generalization of the Fourier transformations, where c theta is given by the relation square root of 1 minus I cot theta upon 2I phi, and the corresponding inversion formula is given by the relation 10. And obviously the assumption is that inversion exists only when phi cap theta of omega, that is also L1 of R. And the complex conjugate of k theta of t omega, that can be simply replaced, if we replace theta by minus theta, then it becomes the fractional Fourier transformations. So here the some rules for differentiation formula, that is, if we take the fractional Fourier transformations of the mth order differentiated function phi, so then it is given by the relation 11, and that is the Gaussian function, that is the standard function exponential minus of at square, where a is positive. So then its fractional Fourier transformation is given by the relation 12. So now, if we are going to denote the differential operator, that is del t is of your d dt minus of it cot theta, so then we can see that the kernel k theta of t omega satisfies the relation 1, and del theta del of t star is given by minus of I d dt minus of it cot theta. So then the fractional Fourier transformations of which operates on the function phi of t, that is given by the relation 2. So these are the some algebraic properties of the kernel of the fractional Fourier transformations, and another property for the differentiated functions of this operator del t of star defined by this one. So now this is the just outline of the proofs, how we can obtain the differentiated formula for the kernel. Similarly, for the second order differentiation, we can have this one. These are very much easy to derive. And second one is also you can easily verify by just simply using the definition of fractional Fourier transformations. We have this one. So these are the just results. And now in example 1, we can see that the Kronecker delta functions having its nth order derivative. Here the derivative is of your taken in distributional sense, not in the as usual sense. So then we have these two properties for the delta functions. We have this one. So now if phi 1 belongs to ln of r, so then we can see that the fractional Fourier transformation is of your L infinity of r and satisfies this norm inequality, and we can see that the fractional Fourier transformation is continuous on r, and as according to earlier one, that is the fractional Fourier transformation is also vanishes at infinite plus minus infinity, both the cases. So these are the few results for the fractional Fourier transformations. And this is the just outline of the proofs for first, second, and third one. So now we are going to consider one another, that is a Heaviside unit step function that is defined by this way. So now if we take define the phi theta of t by this way, that is of your phi theta of t, that is exponential minus of I by 2 t square cot theta minus t multiplied by u of t. So then we can easily see that this functions belongs to ln of r, but if we take its fractional Fourier transformation, so then it does not belongs to ln of r. So now these are the relations for the various forms of Parseval's relations, which corresponds to the fractional Fourier transformations and its simple functions. That is first relation 14 is given by here, that is ft and psi of t, which corresponds to fractional Fourier transformation of both. And here one's fractional Fourier transformation and psi is as usual. And then we have this one that is interchanges its fractional Fourier transformations. And last one, that is the Poincare formula that can be obtained easily by if we choose psi by f of t, so then it reduces to the relation 16. And these are the just outline of the proof. So now here that is the fractional Fourier transformation. For the convolution of fractional Fourier, we have defined the fractional convolution by this way, that is the way that is phi of j psi of t minus j exponential minus of I by 2 t square minus of j square cot theta dj. So that is the extra quantity we have added, that is exponential minus I by 2 t square minus j square cot of theta, which is as a weight function we have taken from the as usual convolution. So now the application of fractional Fourier transformation. So what are the applications? How we can solve different forms of differential equations? So here we are going to consider, suppose L be the any generalized nth order ordinary differential operators, which is given by the relation that is an del t star n and plus n minus 1 and like that up to a naught, where del t star defined earlier one. So if we consider a differential equations, L of phi of t is equals to f of t by the relation 17, and L is the linear differential operator given by this relation. So then how we can apply the fractional Fourier transforms to solve these types of differential equations. So now earlier one we have seen that fractional Fourier transformations of del t star of n, that is of your minus of ij key power cosec theta key power, that is of your n and an. So this comes from the earlier one, this results, and finally phi cap of omega. So this is given by this one. So now if we are going to represent this summation, that is of your P of Z by AR Z to the power R, which is given by this relation, so then we can easily represent by this way, that is phi cap fractional theta of omega, that is given by these relations. And once again, taking the inverse of the fractional Fourier transformation, we have the solution phi of t. So with the help of the earlier results, that is a fractional Fourier transformation of the del t star, some suitable integral power, that is n of phi of t, which is given by minus I omega cosec theta raised to the power n phi cap of omega, and similar for the other terms. And we have this way. So now that is f is known to us, and the polynomial form P of Z is given by this way. So then by taking its inverse fractional Fourier transformation, we can easily evaluate the solution of the given differential equations. So now for particular problem, if we choose L is given by this one, that is 1 minus of del t star square, phi of t is of your f of t is any function. So then by the earlier formula, we can easily evaluate the solution looks like by this way. For the particular values of f, we can easily evaluate the function phi, which satisfies these differential equations. This is the general form, and we can. So now we are going to consider the generalized wave equation. So in general, the generalized wave equation, that is of your del t2 of phi is of your c square, that is del 2 del x2 of phi. So here, if we replace or if we are going to consider this is the differential equations given by the relation 19, and del t star as earlier one, we have seen that that is minus of d dt or plus of I t cot theta, and if we choose theta is of your pi by 2, so then I d dt reduces to the del 2 del x2, and remaining things are same. So it is the general form of the wavelet or wave equations, and which satisfies by these initial conditions, and the boundary conditions are given by these two relations. So now, as in the earlier one, on taking the fractional Fourier transformation on the relation 19, and then after some simple calculations and satisfies these two initial conditions, we can easily evaluate the solutions phi of xt, which can be expressed as p plus of iq of xt, where p is given by fractional Fourier transformation of this one and this one. And later on, we have computed that is p of xt is given by this relation, where lambda theta can be modulated by these types of representation, and q of xt is given by this way. So this is the way to find out the solution for generalized wave equations with the help of the fractional Fourier transformations. And here in the this expression, that is of your phi of xt is given by this relation. If we put theta is of your pi by 2, so then this solution reduces to the as usual or classical solution of the wave equations. We can easily see that theta is pi by 2. This means it is of your 1. This is also Vinicius 1, and this is 1, and this is 1.
Dr. Mahato, I think there is some problem for your sound.
So now these are the few algebraic properties of the Fourier transformations and generalization of Fourier transformation, that is of your fractional Fourier transformation. So now why we need the window transformation? So that is in general, that is the classical Fourier transformation represents frequency contents of f, but it. So now that is earlier one, we have discussed about the Fourier transformations and fractional Fourier transformations and few basic properties, that is your convolution, fractional convolutions, and some conditions with the help of the some particular chosen of spaces. So now why we need to introduce about the windowed transformation? So that is if the function f of t has the sharp bending, that is like Dirac delta functions, or that is high frequencies are there, so then the Fourier transformation is unable to predict the frequency domain, that is it is not as usual, the proper data cannot be recovered with the help of the Fourier transformations having the high frequencies. So for that purpose, we are going to define that is of your windowed Fourier transformation, that is looks like by this way, that is f of s g of s minus t exponential minus of I omega s ds. So we can see that here the extra quantity multiplied by g of s minus t, and remaining things are as usual to the Fourier transformation. So what is the role of this g function? So this g function is said to be as the windowed functions, and it is defined, suppose it has somehow compact support, and that is if g is defined on some closed and bounded intervals having non-zero, and otherwise it is vanishes. So that is how we can plot, that is f of t is, suppose this is the curve of f of t, and g of t, that is windowed function, is up here this one. So most of the time windowed function is taken around the 0, that is the function, this is our g of t, so that is the non-zero, and otherwise it is of your vanishes. So most of the time we are going to consider g of t as of your around the origin, it is non-zero, and suppose this is our f of t, so then their product f t g t is given by this way, and g of t minus t naught can be visaged in this way, and g of t minus 2 t naught, and likewise we can draw the graph of g of t minus t naught. So now if we choose the g of t minus t naught multiplied by this Fourier transformations, so then we can easily predict the value of the frequency representation taken from this domain, that is up here this way to this way. So that can be easily calculated. So if the function, that is f of t, having high frequencies, that is of your subbending is there for this f of t is of your higher one. So though with the help of the function g of t or g of t minus t naught, like that, so we can easily find out the functions on the finite domain, and otherwise it is of your 0. So then with the help of this window transformation, the high frequencies for the high frequencies can be resolved with the help of these window transformations. We can characterize the properly with the help of Windows transform. So that is time frequency localizations can be find out with the help of the window transformation, which is not possible in Fourier transformations. So now what are the examples of g function, that is this windowed function g of t, that is simply we can choose, that is the Gaussian function, that is exponential minus of a t square, that is one of the examples, and another is of your those who are in physics background, that is exponential of I omega x and f of x minus of g of x minus omega. These types of functions can be used to prove with the uncertainty principles and the coherent states of various functions can be seen in the literature of physics backgrounds. So now this way, so now, but so here this figure, that is, look at the figure A, that is the left hand side of the portions, because B represents for the functions of with the help of wavelet, that is if the function g of x is chosen as exponential I omega x x minus of t, so then with the help of the same function f of x is constant function, so then the window transformations for this function g of x is defined by this way, is given by this way. So here you can see that the amplitude is of your same, the frequencies are changes very sharp, very sharp. So that is after, so though introducing the windowed Fourier transformation, so the problem again remains in the window transformation. So because of here the frequencies are changed very much with that is very much in a small time of oscillations, frequencies limits are same. So that is why the problem remains same with the help of the windowed Fourier transformation. So for that purpose, we are, that is the wavelet transformation have been introduced by the J. Morlet, I. Dauchis, and various scientists. So that is defined by the f of t dilation, TB, that is dilation, that is of your translation of the function psi of dt. Here psi is called the mother wavelet, and it satisfies certain conditions, that is of your this psi of t having integration over 0, and another square integrable function. So then the wavelet transformation can be defined by the relation 25. And here that is of your psi of t minus b by a we can choose that is Gaussian functions. So if we choose psi of x is of your Gaussian function, so then look at the graph of b, that its graph looks like this way, that is of your Gaussian functions. So now for the same function f, and if we choose a is less than 1 and b is of your greater than 0. So then the window transformation for the same function, when we have considered for the window transformation, so with the help of this wavelet or this psi function, we can see that this one. So here the oscillation is of your lower, but the frequency is of your high for the values of a less than 1 and b is of your positive. But for the lower one, that is if we choose a is greater than 0, so greater than 1 and b is less than 0, so then we can see that the smooth curve. Here it has the sharp bending, so it is not differentiable in general. And here you can see that this is of your differentiable. So we can express that is of your finite value. So that is the beauty of the wavelet transformation, or this is the difference from the window transformation. So that is based on the parameters, that is dilation parameters A and the translation parameters B. On increasing the values and decreasing the values, we can have the, for the same wavelet psi, we can have the smooth representation of the time frequency localizations. So that is the more important rather than the windowed Fourier transformation. So that is why we have, that is the wavelet transformation has been comes, and it has a lot of applications in image processing and signal processing and in mathematics also. So this one, so that is we are going to denote it by the translation and dilation parameter by this way, psi of BAT. So that corresponds for the Fourier transformations. And as in the earlier one, we have seen that the fractional Fourier is also there. So for that, the psi is defined, the fractional wavelet is given by this one. So that is this much is there with extra multiplied by this quantity, that is modulated type of these types. And that is this is called the admissibility conditions for existence of the wavelet fractional wavelet transformation for this way. That is called the admissibility condition for the wavelet. If psi belongs to L to R, then it satisfies this one. So then we can have the fractional wavelet transformations associated with the fractional Fourier transform for the wavelet psi. So now this is the Mexican hand wavelet, that is the second order derivative of the Gaussian functions with a is equals to 1. We have this one, that is 1 minus t square exponential of minus of t square by 2. So then its fractional Fourier transformation is given by this one. So, and here we are going to represent, that is the real part of the that is the Mexican head wavelet, and this figure corresponds for the fractional Fourier transformations. For the angle theta is of your pi by 6, and that is of your pi by 4, and that is of your angle pi by 2 for the Mexican head wavelet. And these three figures are the fractional Fourier transformations. For the theta is of your pi by 6, pi by 4, and pi by 2. And you can see the beauty of these after taking transformation is corresponds for pi by 4 and pi by 2 with the help of the original Gaussian functions. We can easily see this one. And another is of your Morlet wavelet. So that is of your given by psi of t is by this one, and its fractional Fourier transformation is given by the relation 31. And here this is the just simple calculations how to evaluate the Morlet wavelet's fractional Fourier transformations, and this is the graph for the Morlet wavelet. This is the original one for a is equals to 3, and this figure corresponds for the fractional Fourier transformation of Morlet wavelet. For theta is of your pi by 6, and that is of your pi by 4, and that is for the pi by 2 respectively. And here are some algebraic relations for the fractional wavelet. We have defined earlier one, that is psi of BA theta. If psi t is taken from the square integrable function, so then it is of your also in L2 of R, that is fractional wavelet we have defined, that is psi at L, how it is defined by this way, and its fractional Fourier transformation is given by this way, and this is the just proof how we can evaluate the fractional Fourier transformation of the fractional mother wavelet, this one. And this is the fractional wavelet transformation, how we can define with associated with the fractional Fourier transformation, that is f of t, that is the dilated and translated of the function psi, and as if theta appears, so that is why we have introduced psi of BA theta, and its conjugate, it is defined by the relation 33. So this one. And another way of representations we can express, that is how we can express the wavelet transformation associated with fractional Fourier transformation as in terms of the fractional convolution, that is of your theta, that is as usual our classical convolution, that is of your fractional convolution. By these two relations we can express the fractional wavelet transformation in terms of fractional Fourier transformations. And this is if we have f is a homogeneous function of degree n, so then the wavelet transformation satisfies these relations. These are just few algebraic properties, and this is the Parseval types relations, that is if psi 1 and psi 2 be two wavelets taken from the L2 of R, and W psi 1 theta f and W psi 2 theta of G are two fractional wavelet transformation in terms of fractional Fourier transformations. So then we have this relation which looks like that this relates with the functional relation with the wavelet transformations of the corresponding fractional Fourier transformation. So this is the Parseval type relations, and so where C psi 1 psi 2 psi theta is defined by this way, and it is of your admissibility conditions. And for particular choice of psi, it is given by satisfies these two relations. And if we choose psi 1 is equals to psi 2, so then we have this one. And this C psi theta, that is the admissibility condition, that is defined earlier one. And these are the some particular cases. If we choose f is equals to g, so then this the fractional wavelet transformation satisfies these two norm inequalities. And how we can have the reconstruction formula or inversiation formula for the fractional Fourier wavelet transformation, this is given by these relations, and its Fourier transformation is given by these relations. And this is the outline of the proof. You can easily remove. So now if we define psi tilde and phi tilde by this one, that is psi tilde is given by this way, and the phi tilde is of your given by this one, h cap theta is given by this way. So then the psi tilde, its convolution phi is again a fractional wavelet. This is one another theorem, that is if phi psi be a fractional angle, fractional wavelet, and phi tilde is the bounded integrable functions. So then their convolution is a fractional wavelet, that is from one wavelet we can construct infinite number of wavelets with the help of the using this phi tilde and psi tilde, which are the fractional bounded integrable functions. And this is the proof, that is first of all we have to show that this psi tilde convolution phi tilde is L2 of R, and later on we have to show that this is the satisfies their convolution belongs to the admissibility condition. So this is the proof, we can easily show it. So now that is of your fractional Hankel transformations. So for that one we need to modify the earlier one. We have defined the LPA spaces, and here we are going to define L nu mu of P defined by the relation 37. This is the definition for the spaces L nu mu P over I, that is the positive half line, and for P is equals to infinity we have this one. So now the fractional Hankel transformation is defined by the relation 38. Actually the kernel of the fractional Hankel transformation is given by the relation 38, where this C nu theta is defined by this one, and J nu is the Bessel function of first kind. And this way we are going to define for theta is of your pi by 2, that this reduces to the classical Hankel transformation, and theta is of your n pi, that is of your delta of t minus of omega. So now here we are going to introduce about the fractional Hankel transformation. So here you can see that J nu of T omega, that is of your J n of x is there. So if we choose nu is of your half, so then it becomes the 2 by pi x upon a cosine of x, and nu is of your minus of half, that is 2 by pi x sine of x. So that is the earlier, the Fourier transformations can be recovered by the particular values of nu is of your half and nu is of your minus of half. So that is the beauty of the fractional Hankel transformation, which generalizes the more fractional Fourier transformations. So these are the Parseval's relations for the fractional Hankel transformations. Here we will look about the convolutions, how we can define for the fractional Hankel transformations for the functions psi and phi. It is given by the relation 42, that is phi of omega, that is of your tau theta t, that is the translation of psi. That is earlier we have defined t, and these are the weight functions we have introduced for the fractional convolution for the Hankel transformations, where tau theta of t is given by the relation 43. That is this integration for the function psi. This is given by this one, and d nu mu theta is given by this relation. That is product of 3 Bessel functions. Integration over this one. So in this way, we have defined the fractional Hankel convolution and fractional Hankel translation. And these are the few results related with the d nu mu theta of z and t omega z, and we can see that d nu mu theta t omega z is a symmetric function with respect to the t omega and z, and this is the relation. So we can see that the translation operator defined, fractional Hankel translation operator defined earlier one, which satisfies this harmonicality for the function phi cap, where phi cap is defined by this way. And similarly this one, and now we have earlier one, there is dilation and translation, and we are going to consider, or we are going to construct for the fractional Hankel wavelets. That is earlier one, that is dilation and translation of the function psi. Here the dilation and translation and defined by this way, and which becomes these relations. And here it is the admissibility conditions for the existence of fractional Hankel wavelet transformation. This is for the function psi. If psi is taken from L to nu mu of r and satisfying these relations. So this is the fractional Hankel transformation for the mother wavelet, that is fractional Hankel transformation for the mother wavelet psi of ba theta. This is the relation. And now we have defined the fractional Hankel wavelet transformation for the function f and psi taken from the L to nu mu of I for b greater or equals to 0 and is positive, given by this theorem. And this is the another way to represent the fractional Hankel wavelet transformation in terms of the fractional Hankel transformation. We can express this way. And these are the Parseval's type relations for the fractional Hankel wavelet transformations, that is related with the function f and g associated with its wavelet transformations corresponding to the fractional Hankel wavelet transformations for the wavelet psi 1 and psi 2, where c psi 1 psi 2 is given by this relation, that is looks like the admissibility conditions. And for the particular choice of f and g, this reduces to this one, and psi, if we choose psi 1 psi 2 are same, so then we have this one and this one. This is the Planck-Reynolds relation, and this is the inversion formula or reconstruction formula for the, that is how we can recover the function f of t with the help of its wavelet transformation, which is given by these relations. And here, that is earlier one, we have seen that the fractional convolutions for the Fourier transformations also satisfy, that is once again become a wavelet. So for that one, here we are going to modify the admissibility condition for the existence of fractional Hankel wavelet transformation defined by relation 50. And if we choose the h cap of theta, which is we can see that the fractional Hankel convolution as psi cap and phi double cap. Psi cap is defined by this relation and phi double cap defined by this relation. So then we can see that the h cap of theta is also forms a fractional Hankel wavelet for the function phi is bounded integrable. And last one, that is we have derived some examples. So if we choose f of t is up here given by this way, that is t raised to the 1 mu minus mu exponential of this one for c is greater than 0. So then we have derived after the calculation for the what about the fractional wavelet transformation about this function. So we have this one. So now for the particular values of psi, we can easily evaluate the integral relation of this one, where I use the modified Bessel functions, and a lot of results is used to evaluate this integration, that is x exponential of minus of x square j nu of this one and this one. And then finally we have these results, that is for the above function, the wavelet transformation can be viewed by this one, where psi is of your wavelet and I nu is of your modified Bessel function of first kind. So here we are going to discuss about the fractional application of fractional Hankel wavelet transformation. So here, if that is, we can see that if delta nu mu theta is defined by this differential operator, this one, so then you can see that its fractional Hankel transformation of the derived function is given by this relation, and this will be used to find out some solutions of later one. So this is the del nu mu theta, and here you can see that if we choose mu is of your minus half and theta is of your pi by 2. So this one vanishes, this one vanishes, this one is also vanishes. So then it reduces to the, as usual, del 2, that is of your nabla del 2 del x2 of this way. So here we are going to discuss about the to find out the solution of the heat equations given by the relation 53 with the initial conditions is of your this one. So then taking the fractional Hankel transformations, we have derived this way. And finally we have the solutions, looks like by the relation 58, and then taking the fractional inverse fractional Fourier transformations defined earlier, we can easily evaluate for the particular choice of f. We can easily find out the solution of this heat equation, and similarly we can find out the wave equation also. That is, here we have to change this differential operator, and accordingly conditions we need to impose this one. So this is the all about the representations for the wavelet transformation in terms of either Fourier transformations or fractional Fourier transformations, or fractional Hankel transformations, which are generalization of the as usual classical Hankel or classical Fourier transformations, and few applications are also mentioned in terms of to find out the solution of heat equation or wave equations, to find out the solutions. So these are the few references. So with this I am stopping here. Am I audible?
Yeah.
So is there any question? So we can discuss.
Thank you, Dr. Mahato, for your valuable speech. Participants now can write their question in the chat box. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mahato. Next, we have the lecture session by an erudite academician, Dr. Ali Haidar. I consider this to be my honorable honor and privilege to introduce him, all of you. Dr. Ali Haidar is currently working as a postdoctoral research on fellow at Johns Hopkins University, Baltimore, USA. He has completed his PhD from University of Basel, Switzerland, Then he did his postdoctoral at University of British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. Over to you, Dr. Haidar.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and thanks to the department for organizing such a nice event in this difficult time. Okay, so I'll talk about Laplace equation, and the main focus is just the students. So it would be might be a bit boring for the experts and also some students who are already familiar with it. Okay, so and I will not present any recent results or anything, but just some classical results concerning Laplace equations. Okay, so the Laplace operator, this delta notation, is the sum of all second order derivatives. And here x equals to x1, x2 to xn is a point in Rn. And Laplace equation is simply this one, Laplace n equals to 0. So it is a simplest equation, simplest second order elliptic partial differential equation. And solution to this Laplace equation is called harmonic functions. It's slightly different than that. So if we replace the right hand side by a function f, namely this one, Laplace n equals to f, then this is called Poisson equation. So first part would be to talk about the harmonic functions, that is solution to Laplace n equal to 0, and the second part would be for the Poisson equation. So first of all, some examples of harmonic functions. So since in the Laplacian we have all sum of second order derivatives, so if we take a polynomial of degree 1, then you see Laplacian of that is 0. So simple examples of harmonic functions, the polynomials of degree 1. You can have higher degrees polynomial also. For example, x1 squared minus x2 squared. So if you compute Laplacian of this part, is you get 2, and for this part you also get 2, and there is a minus sign, they cancel. Now if you write in polar coordinates, so simply let's say you are in R2 and functions of the form r to the power k cosine k theta with k equals to 1 to dot dot dot, then this is also a harmonic function. So in particular, for if each k, you get a polynomial of degree k. Also, you can replace cosine theta, cosine by sine function. So all these first three examples are basically polynomials. A different type of example is this one, exponential x1 cosine x2. So here x equals to x1 x2, let's say point in R2. So this is also harmonic, and this is not a polynomial. And if you take on the R2 plane, so you identify it with the complex plane. So then the real and imaginary parts of holomorphic functions, they are also harmonic. And you can show it using the Cauchy-Riemann equation basically. Slightly different. Okay, so far all these functions are smooth in that region. Now let's see some different kind of example. Is this log x in R2 minus the origin, and mod x to the power 2 minus n in Rn minus the origin if n is bigger or equals to 3. So these functions are smooth outside the origin, and they are harmonic. And this last example, this one, it plays an important role in studying basically Laplace equation or elliptic PD, and I will come to it later. So some simple properties of harmonic functions. So here I already mentioned that real and imaginary parts of holomorphic functions are harmonic. And also you all know that holomorphic functions, they satisfy sort of a mean value. Basically you can write the value of a function using the integral on a circle. So harmonic functions also, they satisfy some sort of a mean value. Basically the value of a function at one point is the average of the function in a small neighborhood of that point. So here we take simply omega is an open set in Rn, and U is harmonic in omega. So I am not saying anything about what is it outside omega. Then ux is the average integral of u on a small sphere with center at x. And so this is first one, and exactly this equal quantity is also equal to the average of u on the small balls centered on x at x. And here brx, you can take all the balls brx which are contained in omega, and so you can take r small so that this happens, because if x is an open set, so if for every point x in omega you can find small r for which brx is inside omega, and you get this relation. So how to prove it? Okay, so up to a, let's say, translation or something, we can always assume that zero origin is in the domain, and simply let's prove it for x equals to 0. Now integration by parts. So Laplace u is harmonic, so that is Laplacian u equals to 0. So this integral quantity is first integral quantity is 0 because u is harmonic. And if you do a integration by parts, so then this integral of Laplacian u dy is nothing but integral on the boundary, normal derivative of u and d sigma of y. And since we want to prove that ux equals to this quantity, so in particular this average is independent of the value of r small, so we'll just define this function, this quantity, as a function of r. Let's say wr equals to this average quantity, first integral. Then after doing a change of variable, you can rewrite it as an integral of the on the unit sphere, but here I need to put ry, d sigma y. Now we want to do a differentiation under the integral sign. So r is only inside the integral. So simply if I compute w prime r, so then I have to take a derivative on u of ry. And since this is a derivative in the radial direction, so I get the gradient u times dot y. And if you look at this domain boundary, this is the unit sphere. So gradient u dot y, it is kind of a normal derivative basically, because gradient y direction, y is the normal direction. And so you can rewrite this quantity as one, again do a change of variable to 1 by dvr, integral of dvr del u del nu, because del u del nu is gradient u dot nu, and nu is y on the unit boundary. And this integral is 0 because at the beginning I already wrote down this one. This integral is 0. So in particular, w prime r equals to identically 0. So w is identically a constant function. So w does not depend on the value of r. So for x fixed r, w of r is nothing. Again, if we take limit t goes to 0, w of t, so basically it is constant. So then I get w of 0. Now if you take r goes to 0, and since u is, let's say, C2 simply, then, and I'm taking the average, and if r goes to 0, this quantity converges to u at 0. So wr goes to u0. So in other words, this whole quantity wr is identically u0. So this proves the first relation, ux first equality. Now to prove the second equality, I just want to show that this boundary integral term, average of the boundary integral, is actually the integral on the ball br. So for that, just we need to rewrite the integral on a ball using the polar coordinates. So integral of, for any function f, which is integral br equals to 0 to r, integral of delta bt, so on the unit sphere of radius t, fy d sigma y dt. Simply using this relation, you can get this second equality. Now the converse of mean value property. Namely, okay, so harmonic functions, they do satisfy the mean value. Now conversely, if u is, let's say, simply C2 function and it satisfies this mean value property, then u is harmonic in omega. So the converse is also true. So how to prove it? So now, by assumption that u satisfies mean value, so again I define the WR equals to this one. Then, so by assumption W is identically constant, u of 0. So if I take the derivative W prime, so that is 0. So I know this integral equal to 0 now. And this integral quantity is nothing but integral of Laplacian u is 0. So now if, and this is true for every point BR. Now integral of Laplacian u equal to 0 and center that for any small ball. So that means at Laplacian u has to be identically 0. So basically the proof goes in the opposite direction. Okay, now again let me just see some another interesting fact about harmonic function is something similar to the holomorphic function. So a holomorphic function is C2 implies C infinity. So harmonic functions are also the same, like it is C2 implies C infinity. There is always smooth. So to prove that, we need to introduce something called the modifiers. So fix any eta greater equal to non-negative smooth radially symmetric function such that integral of eta is identical to 1. So you can just multiply by suitable constant to make the integral equal to 1, and it is compactly supported. So simply take eta equal to 0 outside the unit ball. And then for epsilon is small, then do the scaling at epsilon. So here you see that at epsilon, because of this scaling, integral would be always 1, and it is 0 outside the ball B epsilon. And also close to the origin, since eta is positive, eta epsilon goes to infinity because of this 1 by epsilon to the power n factor. Okay, now we define a convolution. So already I mentioned this. So for a given function w, so simply here we are assuming it is a continuous function. That w epsilon is integral over Rn, eta epsilon x minus y wy dy. So here you see we don't need to assume any growth assumption on w at infinity because this integral is supported on p epsilon of x and w is bounded, so the integral is well defined always. Okay. Okay, now since eta is smooth, eta epsilon is also smooth. So here you can do differentiation under the integral sign to conclude that w epsilon is a smooth function. And what about the relation between w and w epsilon? Okay, so if epsilon goes to 0, then w epsilon would converge to w locally uniformly in Rn. And in case you replace the space, this one by some like ck or c0 alpha or lp, then this convergence would be also in the similar space. So basically using this convolution and using the modifiers, we can approximate any function by some smooth functions in a suitable norm. Okay, now to prove the harmonic functions are smooth. So here we are assuming that u is a continuous function and which satisfies the mean value property, and then it has to be smooth. So prove. So for the omega, for epsilon is small, we take a domain omega epsilon which is slightly smaller than omega. So we take all the points inside the domain which are at least the distance from those points from the boundary is at least epsilon. Okay, and then define e epsilon x using the convolution with ey, and here x is a point in omega epsilon. And okay, so here you can put the integral in Rn, but the point is eta epsilon is supported in b epsilon of x, and the distance between x to d omega is bigger than epsilon, so u is well defined in the domain of where it is non-zero, and the integral is well defined. And as I already mentioned before, E epsilon is a smooth function. And now how is the, because of the fact that U is satisfies a mean value property, we have a nice relation between E epsilon and U. So now we rewrite this part, this integral quantity in polar coordinates. So, and eta epsilon is a radial function, so I can rewrite it as integral on the boundary of BR, Uy d sigma y, and eta epsilon r dr. Now, because of the mean value property, so this quantity is nothing but ux, but I have to multiply it by the measure of the boundary BR. Okay, so then ux x, so this ux goes outside of the integral, and then what's left is integral 0 to epsilon at epsilon of r, measure of delta BR dr, and that is nothing but at epsilon y dy, the full integral, and that is 1. So simply because of this mean value property of that U satisfies, E epsilon is U in omega epsilon, and because of this relation, first one, U epsilon is a smooth, so we get U is smooth in omega epsilon. Now if epsilon goes to 0, then union of omega epsilon would cover the whole omega, and so you get U to be smooth in omega. Here I am not saying anything about the regularity up to the boundary, because simply we don't know, simply it is not true also. Okay. Now, an interesting property of the harmonic functions is the maximum Pichat principle. So let's say omega is a smooth bound domain or something, and U is a C2 function which is continuous up to the boundary. And if it is harmonic in omega, then the maximum of U inside on the whole domain is actually the maximum on the boundary. And not only that, if omega is connected, and if there is a point inside omega such that maximum is attained, so maximum of U in omega bar is Ux naught, for some x naught belongs to omega, then U has to be identically constant. So to prove that, simply we need to use the mean value property. So maximum is at, let's say maximum is attained at some point in omega, so we can write U at x naught using this mean value, and for, since x naught is in the domain, we can find some small r for which this relation is true, because BR x naught should be inside omega, and U x naught is the maximum, so Uy less equals to U x naught, and then average the cancel, I get the right answer in inequality here. Now, so this means U is identically U of x naught in BR x naught. So if maximum is attained at one point, so then we see that in a small neighbor ball centered at that point, U is identically constant. Now we can cover this way the whole domain U to conclude that U is identically constant. And since here we need to also use that omega is connected. And also other way you can say it, because omega is connected and the set of points where maximum is attained is a closed set, and also because of this relation you say that set is open, so that means it has to be the whole set. Now a nice application of maximum principle is the uniqueness of solution. So here we are considering the PDE, Laplacian U equals to F in the whole domain omega, but here we need to specify the boundary condition on the d omega. So here we need the boundary condition on the whole domain, whole boundary. So it's slightly different than from the ODE, because in ODE you just need to specify the boundary condition or the initial condition at one point, but here because of the PDE we need the boundary condition to be on the whole boundary. So to prove the uniqueness, simply assume there are two solutions, U1 and U2, Then the difference W equals to U1 minus U2 satisfy is harmonic because they satisfy same equation, and they are also identical. W is also identically 0 on the boundary. Then by maximum principle, maximum of W in the whole domain is equal to the maximum of W on the boundary, that is 0. So maximum of W equals to 0 means U1 is less equals to U2. In a similar way, you can show U1 is bigger equals to U2, that is U1 equals to U2. So here the proof is quite formal in the sense that I have not said in which space F is and which space G is. So simply here you will think of F is a C2 function, G is continuous, something like that. But all those conclusions are also true in very weak sense. Okay, so now I have already mentioned that harmonic functions are smooth. So now next question is, what sort of estimates do we have for the derivative of the functions? So here what it says that if U is harmonic in omega, then the derivative of order alpha, so here alpha is a multi-index, and with mode of alpha order is k, so any derivatives of order k is less equals to ck by r to the power n plus k, and then we need to take the integral over on a small ball of brx and absolute value of ui dy, and this holds for every br which is contained in omega, and this constant ck is independent of u and independent of the omega. And actually this ck, it behaves like k to the power k times some m to the power k. And because of that, actually one can show that harmonic functions are analytic. So they are not just smooth function, but they are analytic. That is, it can be represented using the power series expansion. Okay, now application of this estimate on the whole space Rn. So that is the Liouville theorem. What it says is that bounded harmonic functions in Rn are constants. Okay, so here simply we want to use this inequality with alpha mod alpha equals to 1. So just take del u del xi partial derivatives, then k equals to 1. So c by r to the power n plus 1 integral brx mod of ui dy. So by hypothesis u is bounded, so I take L infinity norm u outside. So then we are left with c by r to the power n plus 1 integral br dy, and integral of br is not just up to a constant, is r to the power n. So you get this part is like 1 by r kind of. So if you take now the domain is whole Rn, so this relation holds for every r positive. So now taking r goes to infinity, we get the right hand side equal to 0. That means gradient u is identically 0, so u is constant. Okay, now actually this theorem actually holds with more generality. Namely, if u is harmonic in Rn and if it has some sort of polynomial growth, modulus to the power m with some m positive and c positive, then u has to be a polynomial. So for example, if m equals to, in previous theorem, if you take m equals to 0, then it is also a polynomial, but polynomial which is bounded, then it is identically constant. Now to prove this one, what we need to use is again this estimate, but now we need to take mod of alpha, that is k large. So here, then if k is large, at least bigger than m, then you get r to the power n plus large k, and this growth, because of that growth assumption, you will get r to the power m plus n type. And so then if k is large, this whole quantity would go to 0 if we take r goes to infinity. Okay, so now another property of harmonic function is that it satisfies Harnack inequality. So what it says is, if omega is u is harmonic in omega, and we need to also assume that u is non-negative, then for every compact set omega tilde contained in omega, there exists a constant c which depends on is omega tilde and omega, but not on the function u, such that supremum, here u is missing, supremum of u is less equal to c times infimum of u. And here we cannot take omega tilde is omega. In that case, this is not true actually. And also we need to assume that u is non-negative. So first application of this theorem is to prove sort of compactness. So for instance, if uk is a sequence of non-negative harmonic functions, let's say in omega and b1, and they are bounded or at just one point, then the whole sequence would be pre-compact. So there it is bounded in some good norm locally uniformly in omega. And here we also again we need that the sequence to be non-negative because of this. So uk greater equal to 0 is necessary, because if uk at simple example is uk x equal to k times x1, so it satisfies uk 0 equals to 0. So this condition, it is harmonic, but this sequence is not pre-compact. Okay, now to study the Poisson equation, that is, if we replace the right hand side by function f, we need to know some thing called fundamental solution. So to introduce the fundamental solution, let's look at the radial solutions to this PD. So what are the radially symmetric harmonic function? So Laplacian u equals to 0 and u is radially symmetric means you can write the PD using in terms of ODE, and that is u double prime plus n minus 1 by r u prime equal to 0. Then multiply this ODE by r to the power n minus 1, and you can rewrite it as r to the power n minus 1 u prime whole prime equal to 0. Then solving it, you get ur equals to some a log r plus b if n equals to 2, and a r to the power 2 minus n plus b if n bigger equals to 3. So these functions tx equal to, now I take b equals to 0 here, and a is some dimensional constant, and this function log x and mod x equal to 2 minus 1, they are called fundamental solution for Laplacian. And this constant cn is chosen so that some kind of integral is equals to 1. It's just a normalizing constant. So now using this fundamental solution, we have a nice representation formula. So Poisson equation. So this is the Poisson equation. Here I am putting a minus sign because that makes that operator positive, definite. So we want to solve this equation in Rn. So simply, if f has sufficient decay at infinity, then again we can define ux using this convolution. So now if you look at the phi in dimension 2, it goes to infinity log x, but in dimension bigger equals to 3, it has some decay at infinity, but still phi is not integrable at infinity. So this is why we need some sort of nice decay on f so that this integral makes sense. So then u would satisfy this PDE minus Laplacian u equals to f. So the proof is quite simple. So you just simply take the derivative with respect to x in both sides. So here you put Laplacian x, so px minus y f by dy. Now you can do integration differentiation under the integral sign here, but the thing is, if x minus y not equal to 0, then Laplacian of phi is 0 because phi is a fundamental solution. But the problem is here, if you take the second derivative of phi, so in dimension 2 you get 1 by mod x squared, like kind of, because of log x, and 1 by mod x squared kind of singularity is not integrable at the origin. And also in dimension n, with n bigger equals to 3, the second derivative of this quantity is like mod x to the power minus n, and that is also not integrable at the origin. Here we cannot simply put this Laplacian on phi. So this is why we do a change of variable and we rewrite it as phi of y, f of x minus y, and now simply assume f is C2 and it has nice decay. Then I can put this Laplacian on f. Next, what we do is we split this integral Rn in two parts, like b epsilon of x and b complement of b epsilon. Now if epsilon goes to 0, phi is integrable on b epsilon, and Laplacian of f is a bounded function. Then this integral quantity would go to 0 if epsilon goes to 0. And for the complement part, on the complement b epsilon x, phi is a nice function. So we can replace Laplacian x by Laplacian y because there is a translation, and we can do integration by parts. So, and there we use the Laplacian phi equals to 0. So what will be left out is just the integral on the boundary on b epsilon and some normal derivative of phi and f, and that would actually give f. And here basically we need to use that constant Cn to make some quantities identically 1. Okay, now we okay. So here we were, the equation was on the whole space Rn. Now we move from Rn to, let's say, a bounded domain simply, or in any domain in Rn. So we want to express again as before the solution in terms of f. Now since we are in a bounded domain or a domain which is not the whole space, we need to also specify the boundary condition. Okay. So now in the particular case, when omega is the unit ball or any ball, or omega is the half space Rn plus, then there exists an explicit function g equal to gxy, such that the solution to this PD you can write using this formula. So ux equals to integral omega gxy by dy. And this function g is called the Green's function. If omega is not v1 or Rn plus, so for a general smooth bounded domain, the function Green's function g, it exists theoretically. And also you can have asymptotic expansion, like when x is close to y, then it is like the fundamental solution, and when y is close to the boundary, it is like 0. And now next is, what if we replace u equals to 0 on the boundary by a function g. So now we are considering a little bit more general equation. So Laplacian equals to f and u equals to 0 on the boundary. Again, here I assume that omega is smooth and e, f, g are C2 functions, things like that. So here also, as before, you can have a representation formula even for every domain. U is integral omega gxy by dy plus integral on a boundary domain, but there is another part kxy gy d sigma y. So in previous representation I had g equal to 0, so I did not have this term, second term, and this function k is called the Poisson kernel. Okay, so now here if you put f equals to 0, so then u is harmonic. So in that case we will not have the first part, but we will have only the second part. So that means given any function g on the boundary of the domain, by this representation you get a harmonic function simply. And again, if omega is a ball or it is the upper space, then g and k both are explicitly known. Okay, now another slightly different way to prove the existence of solution. So here, because of this representation, we know given f g we get a solution, and of course, as we already mentioned, that the solutions are unique. So in a different way to prove the existence of solution, there is the Dirichlet principle. Okay, let's say define a energy functional. So here for a function w, we define g of w is integral omega half of gradient w square minus f of w dx. So, and here I am taking a gradient. So simply if w is a like C1 function, then we can think of the gradient. So then integral makes sense. But of course, this integral is well defined in a Sobolev space like W12 basically. Okay, so how did the Dirichlet principle says that if U is a C2 up to the boundary, solves this PDE, so the minus Laplacian equals to F and equals to G on the boundary, if and only if J of U is actually the minimum of J on this space C2 up to the boundary and W equal to G. So for all functions W in C2 omega bar, with satisfying the boundary condition W equal to G, then take the minimizer. So if the minimizer exists, then that satisfies this PDE with the same boundary condition. And if there is a solution of this equation, then it is the minimizer. So simply there is a PDE. So then by minimizing a functional, you get a solution. So next question is, so given a functional, is there always a minimizer? And the answer is no. And here is a simple example by Orestas. So here JW is just we are in dimension 1, minus 1 to 1, x w prime, this is the derivative, square dx. And the space where I am interested in is like Lipschitz continuous in minus 1 to 1. W at minus 1 is minus 1, W at 1 is 1. Now let's define this sequence of functions wk. So it is minus 1 in this range, minus 1 to minus 1 by k. Kx in the second range and 1 by k to 1. So this wk, they are Lipschitz continuous, satisfies this two condition, minus 1 at minus 1 it is minus 1, plus 1 is plus 1. And if you just compute the integral for wk, you get that j of wk goes to 0. So if there is a minimizer on this of this functional on this space, then the minimum should be 0. So if it is attained by some function, then j of w equal to 0 means x w prime has to be identically 0. That means w prime is identically 0, that is w is identically constant. But if w is identically constant, then it doesn't satisfy these boundary two endpoint conditions. And so in particular for this functional, we do not have any minimizer. Okay, I will stop here. So thank you for your attention.
Participants, if you have any question, please you can write in the chat box.
Okay, so there is a question like if there is any practical application. Okay, so this is the Laplace equation. It is a physical equation. It appears in physics in different topics. And what I just mentioned is kind of very basic things on the Laplace equation. So basically you need to do any further analysis, you need these basic results. So this is just the backbone of the analysis basically. Okay, there is next question is locally uniform. So that convergence locally uniform, that means on any compact set the convergence holds uniformly. Okay, the Poisson kernel. Okay, so the Poisson kernel, the function kxy is nothing but a normal derivative of g, the Green's function, which is in taking the y variable. So here we have a function k, and it will be a harmonic function in the domain omega. It is, so in particular k is smooth, but it has sort of singularity on the boundary when x equal to y, x approaches y. And yeah, and in case the domain is ball in or the upper space, then we also have a explicit representation of k.
Dr.
what is
Haider,
the-
Dr. Haider, there is another question. What is the Dirichlet problem for Laplace equation? From
Okay,
the term?
okay, yeah. Actually, this equation is called the Dirichlet problem. This one, then the minus Laplacian equals to f in omega and e equals to g on the boundary. This one is called Dirichlet problem. And if you put this boundary condition u equal to 0, g by normal derivative of u equals to g, then it is called a Neumann problem. Okay, let me know the Laplace equation in polar system. Okay, in polar coordinates, polar system, the Laplacian is operator is not just u double prime plus n minus 1 by r u prime plus 1 by r squared Laplacian with respect to the theta variable that is on the sphere. That is the Laplacian.
Okay, I think there is no more any question. Before going to end this session, I'll request to Dr. Kanailal Mahato. There is one question for Kanai. Dr. Kanailal Mahato, please on your microphone. There is a question for Dr. Mahato. Are you there, Dr. Mahato?
Yeah, I am there. Yeah.
Okay, there is a question. What are the difference between FRFT and wavelet?
That is FRFT means that is nothing but the fractional Fourier transformation, which is a generalization of Fourier transformations. The kernel have been modulated with the angle theta, and the wavelet transformation is a much more better way of representation for getting any kind of signal in high frequencies or any other domains. That there are a lot of differences between FRFT means fractional Fourier transforms and wavelet transforms.
Okay, I think Vikram Ghosh, Sir Vikram Ghosh, I think you are satisfied with the answer from Dr. Mahato. Is there any more question? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Haider, for the wonderful session. We have some questions for you, and you answered all the questions. I think our participants are satisfied from the speakers. This is it for today. I thank all the distinguished speakers for the wonderful lecture session. I thank all the respected members of our college and dear participants who attended the first lecture session. Our second and last lecture session is going to be started from 5 p.m. tomorrow. I request our participants to join us tomorrow on right time. Thank you.
I will just take a moment from our convener, Dr. Ajul Haq. just for the participants, I would like to share some more information that just like the email you received today for this session, for the next session, you will receive another email, I think within today night or tomorrow morning. So kindly log in tomorrow with a new email, new link. This link will be inactive tomorrow. The new link which will be generated will be useful for tomorrow's session. And regarding the feedback form, I want to announce that the feedback form will be provided at the end of tomorrow's session. So after tomorrow, actually the entire seminar will be completed. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you everyone for your kind attention.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.